Welcome, and thanks for listening to the Veritas Road. I'm Carson here with Murph. Murph, what's going on, buddy?
Nothing much, dude. I'm just happy to be here. Happy to be in the summertime with my lemonade and just here to talk. And I'm in a good place.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. So, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing here.
Okay. You going to talk about it? You want me to talk about it?
I want you to talk about it a little bit.
All right.
I want to hear from
for
you.
anybody who has listened to this before, in kind of our trial runs, we're kind of wiping the slate clean a little bit, not really, but a little bit. Our camera quality and our sound was kind of, so now we bought a better...
Terrible is the word you're looking for.
Well, we got to be positive. So bought a new camera. We've learned a lot on the technical side from our trial runs.
Right.
And a little bit how to talk to each other a little better, I feel like. I'm going to try to not interrupt as much, but that's beside the point. So, wiping the slate clean, we're coming out with our new kind of, this is it. This is our podcast.
Right. A fresh start, as it were.
A fresh start.
Yeah.
You said all the words I just said in 2 words. A fresh start.
Right. So we're looking at what we've done over the past year is kind of just practice. Like we were getting to hopefully where we'll be now and learning how to produce a quality product for people.
Yeah, we want people to listen. We want people to think. And it's going to be fun. I'm really excited about the stuff we're going to talk about over the course of the next several months. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. We need to talk a little bit about what in the world is Veritas.
Yeah. So we named this podcast The Veritas Road. The word Veritas, if you're not a Latin major, which I'm not, and I don't think most people are, is Latin for truth. And what we're hoping to do is to uncover as much truth as we can while we're here.
Yeah, man, it's just a crazy world out there. There's so much, for those 2020 has been just insane. You don't know what to believe. You don't know what to expect. You don't know who's telling you the right thing. And nobody, I don't want to, that's too much generalization, but nobody's got discernment anymore. It's just a free-for-all out there. So we're kind of getting together. We've been doing this for like a year, just talking about life, and we just decided to record the stuff hiccups are back again. Record the stuff we're saying.
Yeah. And so if you have listened before, all of that stuff is going to go away. And so if you want any of what you've heard before, if you want to hang on to that, save what you can, because it's all about to disappear. And now we're starting fresh. And
we're just looking for the truth, man.
Right.
And it's a really long journey. The truth is not something you find in a day. It's an asymptotic type thing. You get closer and closer and closer, but you'll never find it. Even the wisest men in the world, from you picture some monk chanting Om on top of a mountain in the east, even that guy is still never going to hit it. It's a journey, and it's a metaphorical name. We're going down the road to try to find it.
Right.
And we want, people to listen to us, and we're going to have people, at first our friends, to talk about stuff that we don't know about. And of course, nobody wants to listen to just me and you talk all day, or maybe they do. But, we'll throw in some variations in there.
Yeah. The goal is to have as many experts as we can on, but we're broke and have no resources. So till then, we're going to make do with what we have, either ourselves or our friends, as close as we can get to having experts on.
Yeah, we're going to try our best, and we're going to hope people. The biggest thing is we want people to think about just the current situation and about all the topics we're going to talk about, because there's so much to discover out there, and then there's an objective truth to be found. Which is a redundant statement. There's a truth to be found.
Well, yeah. So talk a little bit about that, because here in what year is this? 2020. Most of society seems to believe that there is no such thing as an objective truth, and that's a hard pill to swallow, at least for me.
Yeah, I think that's highly illogical, but it's part of the New Age movement. The whole it's a self-centered type. Your truth is your truth, and nobody can tell you, what your truth is. But I, in my opinion, that's just not how it is. It's just not reality. Like, the truth is an answer. It is something. Like, I know this is extremely abstract talking, but it's almost like a goal. It's a thing that's out there and maybe hidden in part to people, but like, there's an answer out there whether you know it or not. And that's, you know what I'm trying to say? I feel like I'm beating that dead horse.
Yeah, no, I wonder
Explain it in better terms.
I wonder if what you're saying here is that, one, people sometimes confuse the word truth with like life experience or meaning. Like, go find your truth really means go find meaning in your life, right?
Go find yourself. That's
which is a good thing in and of itself. But to confuse that with objective truth runs us, I think, into some problems.
Yeah, she said that better than I ever could, and that's what we're going to try to get to, is the objective truth.
Yeah, and I guess we're operating under the assumption that objective truth does, in fact, exist.
Well, maybe we can have some new age people on to talk about that, but we can talk about that all night. Yeah, we're going on that assumption.
Yeah. And so we're going to try to uncover as much truth as we can, as often as we can, with as many people as we can, and hope that we'll encourage you to do the same on your own.
Yeah, about a bunch of different subjects, too. It's not just going to be this abstract philosophy mumbo-jumbo.
Yeah, we're going to talk about literally everything we can think of, like philosophy, science, English.
Yeah, history, pop culture, health, etc., ellipsis.
Oh, etc. I see what you did there. Yeah.
And then IE. You got the I.E.
Yeah.
Something. I don't know what that means.
I'm with you. So what brought us to this point? I mean, I know it was, about a year ago that you and I sat down and decided we wanted to pull something like this together. And for us to reach a point in our lives where we wanted to make something like this happen, a lot of things had to kind of shake us to our core, at least for me personally.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I know for me, like, man, my life has been just something else. I feel like it just started like everybody else's life, at least in the conservative South, raised in a conservative church-going family, go to school, and you go to school in preparation of going to college. And you go to college in preparation of getting a job, and then you get a job and you got to get your house and your mortgage, and then you just save up for retiring and maybe have some kids along the way, and then you retire and then you die. And I personally thought that, like, for a really long time, that's kind of, I guess, all I thought life was and all I thought I was ever going to do. But as I got older, and I really started to think hardcore about this kind of stuff when I was like 13. I can remember a specific instance in Horizons.
13?
Yeah. Yeah. And for anybody who didn't know, Horizons is like a church camp. But I remember specifically there was a lesson in Horizons, and I don't want to get too religious or anything right now, but I'll just say, like, the dude was talking about stuff. Man, that's so generic. The dude was talking about religious things, and I was like, how does this guy know this is true? Like, everybody was just listening to it and saying yeah, or some, most people didn't even care. I was like, how in the world does he really know any of this? And that was the first time I'd ever actually thought for myself, probably. But then I still kind of just went along with the flow. We both went to a conservative Christian school, and for more or less, I was like everybody else.
Yeah.
Same. Everybody was going to college. Everybody was. You knew what to expect out of people. That's a big thing. Like I just feel like I'm becoming called to live a life that you're just not expected to live. If that made any sense.
No. Yeah. So you're saying,
and I was growing into that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm still.
So there was a template, right?
Yeah,
that was laid out for people
a template, yes,
our age, and that did the same things we were doing in life.
Yes.
And you felt a little bit like you were called to be or do something, that you were headed down a different path.
Well, I mean, I grew out of it. It's not like I always felt that way. It's like I started to grow out of that template and felt like and then there's more to life than just the stuff that it's been crammed down our neck. And that really kicked off. I won't get into anything too personal. My parents got divorced when I was 18, like right after I graduated. Well, no, they got divorced when I was 19. But a lot of stuff happened right before I was 18, or right when I was 18. But anyway, that was a real big catalyst into waking me up to realize, oh, wait a minute, this life is not what I've been told it is.
Right. And
something's not right. But even at that point, I was still really tethered to the template, even though I knew I wasn't going to fit in the template deep down. Not to get too touchy-feely or whatever. It's very hard for me to express this. But
Yeah.
But that all kind of came to a head whenever, first of all, when we went to visit our friend in Virginia, I had like kind of like a, I don't know what you would call that, a mental breakdown. I got like real sick.
Yeah. So we went up to Virginia to tour Polyface Farms, and while we were up there, you had a severe, what I would categorize as a severe anxiety attack.
Yeah, I hate that word.
To the point that I had to take you to the hospital.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. It's just amazing how all that pent up negative energy can affect you physically. But that's another topic for another time. That is. But after that happened, I kind of started to just be like, man, I can't live life like this. I can't try to fit this mold that I'm not meant to fit. It's hard for me to say.
Words are hard.
Yeah, they're really hard for me. You're so good with them, and I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I can't fit this mold. Something's got to change. And then I started, about a year later, my grandma died. And about that time, it was actually right before she died, but when she died, I was like, I started to investigate, we'll just say I'd started to investigate some historical events and started to see them in a new light.
Yeah.
And that led me down one rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole went down another one, and another one, and another one, until it snowballed to the point where I was like, oh my, fill in the expletive here. Like,
right.
This world is not what we've been told it is.
Yeah.
And, I'll save my opinions on that for later episodes, but let me tell you, folks, this world is not what we think it is. And that's kind of my journey into wanting to talk about the stuff that I've been discovering, to hear other people's thoughts on the stuff I'd been talking about, if they even want to listen to it, and to hear other people's perspectives on stuff that I haven't heard of yet. So kind of a threefold monster.
Yeah.
Plus trying to tell other people about what I believe to be true, and to, rest that against the scale of other people's judgment. Because I don't think I'm a crazy person.
I don't think anyone thinks they themselves are a crazy person, but
maybe like really crazy bipolar people do, but I'm not bipolar. It's just like, it's just a I don't want to say feeling, because I don't like that word, but it's just like something in you, or at least in me, was like, this template I've been given, and I love that you said template, because it's perfect. This template, this life that I'm supposed to live,
yeah,
I'm not supposed to do it. And that hit it. That I knew that when I had that mental breakdown, and I started on my journey to understanding what that means when my grandmother died, and that was 2 years ago. It was 25 months ago. She died on June 8th, 2018. But,
yeah.
So that's a kind of a brief synopsis of my story, if you can call that a story. It wasn't much of a story of my journey.
Yeah.
And I know you have similar experiences, but first, you started way earlier than me and kind of in a different area. But I'll let you talk about yourself.
No, I mean, I did. And, for me, it did start much earlier. I think I was, I wasn't even born yet when that journey started for me. I mean, my parents were told, hey, by the way, your kid's going to have Down syndrome in the doctor's office, and asked if they wanted to keep the baby. And, through tears, my mother said, hey, yeah, we do. And she changed her whole lifestyle. Everything about the way my parents were living changed from that day forward, which
let me just
eternally grateful for.
Let me stop you right there. Isn't that a crazy question to ask somebody? Like, I couldn't imagine what your mother was thinking when
No, I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. Like that.
I mean, your parents were old.
Yeah, no, my dad was. I was born in '93. My dad was born in '49. So my dad was. By the time I was born, my dad had just turned 44 a week before I was born. My mom would have been almost 38.
So you were a surprise.
I was. If you ask my father, I was an accident of a moment of passion.
Well, there you go. That's been said now.
Yeah,
I knew what was coming.
And so. They had that conversation, and they decided to completely revamp and change the way they were living their lives, which included, things like nutrition, things like sleep. And it was drastically different from the way other people were living at the time. And so, my parents were that weird, like, hippy dippy couple that went to the precursor to Wild Oats, which was the precursor to Whole Foods. It was called Sunshine Grocery in Nashville, Tennessee. And it was this tiny little like hole in the wall hippie store. You know, everybody that went there had like dreadlocks and smelled like hemp back in the 90s. And that wasn't a thing back in the 90s. And, you know, lo and behold, 9 months later, I come into the world and, you know, relatively healthy. And that was a big deal. That definitely changed the way that they looked at life, and consequently, you know, changed the way that I looked at life. And so you fast forward 6 years, I'm in kindergarten, and that year was the year that my dad lost his job. He was a self-taught hydraulic specialist. Got diagnosed with diabetes, and then I had 2 grandparents and a great-grandmother die all in the same year.
That's pretty brutal for kindergarten.
That was not a fun time.
I guess you really had a real Y2K.
Yeah, I did. And that was pretty eye-opening for a 6-year-old. But the big thing that blew my mind was from then on, from the time my dad was diagnosed with diabetes up until the 2010, the year he died. I think that was 2010. No, it was 2009.
Yeah, it was
2009, the year he died. I spent a lot of time looking at the way people handled health and wellness and illness here in the U.S. And one of the first things I noticed, even as a young kid, was that every time I went for a doctor's visit, all of my doctors and nurses did not seem healthy. They didn't seem healthy. These people who were supposed to be like the hallmark of medicine and wellness and everything that's supposed to be healthy and good about the human body, when I walked into a doctor's office, they didn't seem well. And that idea was only cemented in the way my father's treatment was handled. He got diagnosed with lymphoma.
It's 2007.
In 2007, okay, yeah. All of that time is fuzzy for me. There's a lot of stuff I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I have a good memory with dates.
And so he was diagnosed with lymphoma. He was diagnosed with diabetes way back when. He had a mess of other health issues, you know, during that gap. And I spent a lot of time in hospitals seeing the way that patients were treated, seeing the way that healthcare worked here, and noticed that none of it was working. None of it was working. The only things that I had seen worked were the things that happened at home, away from the doctor's office, that were natural. Macrobiotics was a big thing back then, which is a Japanese-influenced like diet and lifestyle intervention. That's what my mother did before she had me. The only things I had seen work were either Eastern medicine or, you know, holistic healthcare interventions. And after my dad died in, I think it was 2009, my whole perspective had changed because I had seen all of the failure of Western medicine. And Western medicine is supposed to be this science-based, like we're super exact, we know how the human body works, we know what drug to give you at what time and exactly how much, and none of that worked.
Yeah, it seems to me like you went from seeing a bunch of failures to a collective failure as system as a whole whenever your dad died.
That's exactly right. And so after that happened, it took me a few years. I started college in 2012, and I'm just now about to graduate in August of 2020.
Oh, praise the Lord.
Finally. But that started my own journey learning about holistic health and wellness and trying to figure out just what health really means, just what medicine really looks like. And once I started investigating that side of our society, that side of the way we work here in the U.S. as a country and across the world, a whole lot of other stuff started to break down. And then I, would make trips back home and started talking with you about a lot of different things. And my whole perspective on life changed during that period of time.
Yeah, man, it can get pretty brutal. Like it's almost like for both of us, there's like a domino to fall.
Yeah,
and then and then it just starts to keep falling, and you're just like, man, I got to tell somebody. I got to talk about this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when most of the people you meet from day to day are just happy to watch television or to play on their phones and not question bigger things, it's a breath of fresh air when you're finally able to sit down with someone and address those bigger questions, those bigger issues.
Yeah, because there's so many big and that's another thing I wanted to talk about is like even in church and stuff, like there was never any real big talk. I mean, what I mean by big talk is like just talk about like life and you know why we're in life and what do you do about the people that you know suffer and like you know just like stuff that was almost like taboo. If you talked about, people thought you were crazy.
There's so much stuff that's taboo. Yeah.
And there's some things that are taboo for good reason, but I don't want to get into that. But it's just like there's just something missing from the template we'd been given.
No, there is, and I know at least in the health and wellness field, there's a lot missing, and most of the stuff that's missing has been taken out.
Yeah, just go ahead and say it.
Or lost, one of the two, and that has happened to the detriment of our health as a society. And I know you've seen a lot of that. You know, you have a background in like banking and finance and accounting, and I know you've seen a lot of that there as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was a banker for 5.5 years. Kind of had enough of it. I don't want to get into this too much because it's just a crap show. But you tried to go off the grid, I guess you could say. Succeeded for a little bit.
Yeah. So you've kind of made some life and goal changes over the past few years.
Yeah,
right?
I've tried.
Talk a little bit about those. Tell me a little bit about those.
Well, I mean, it's back to what I was saying earlier. You know, I just wasn't fitting this right. When I started realizing all the stuff I'd realized after my grandma died, I was like, holy crap, I can't keep doing the stuff I'm doing in good conscience. And, you know, we're going to save this for later episodes, not to get into anything too specific, but I was like, this is, at least the system of banking was like, man, this is the most corrupt thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, I can't do this. And I was just getting real tired of doing the same thing over and over again. People were... I mean, there were some. Don't get me wrong. There are lots of good people at that bank, but most of the people I interacted with were robots. Man, it's just like it's almost like something was missing from them. And I don't want to be mean or anything, but it's just like same thing over and over and over again. All they ever thought about was what am I going to do when I get home, or you know, who's going to win the next football game or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I like football as much as the next guy. I don't want. My point is, I don't want to sound too judgmental.
Yeah.
But it's just like the same over and over stuff. And I just got tired. And I got tired of serving, I guess I could just call it the banking system. And I just wanted enough of it. And I decided to quit my job. I bought a piece of land, saved up enough money where I thought I could live, and made this huge long plan, prepared for 5 months more or less. Probably should have prepared more. But
probably.
Looking back. But anyway, and I was doing all right for a few days, and then the bottom fell out. And I won't talk about that, but what was my point with that? I guess the point was I tried to change to escape. I guess you can call it escape. And I'm just, how do I escape? And how do I change my life? Because I just feel like I'm being clawed back into it. It's amazing once you realize what it is. And, you know, we'll talk about that eventually. I hope we'll get there.
The system is a good term for what you're talking about now. Like pulled back into the
it's pulling me literally
system.
As we speak, it's pulling me back. And like I said, this is supposed to be a generic thing, but it's getting me. And it's just fascinating on how life molds people into the same thing, you know?
Yeah, no, one thing I wanted to kind of address is like there's that whole idea of the term kind of annoys me now, but like people that are woke, so to speak, in quotation marks, woke, and people that aren't. And what you're talking about are the people who wouldn't fall under that heading, like wouldn't fall under the whole idea of being woke or whatever that means. And, you know, people who are just content to spend every day watching TV shows.
Yeah, you got
paying attention to football. You keep
coming up with good words. Content is a great word. Like the people who are just content with how it is. You know, that's what I want to. That's what we want to try to accomplish with this show, is to try to get people to realize, you know, your contentment. I guess another word for that would be complacency. It's not good for you. Like, it's really detrimental to you.
No, and that's something that I have a hard time with, because when we address, when you and I sit and talk about things that are a little bit heavier, that stuff's hard to deal with, and it's taxing. Like, it is taxing on your mental and emotional stamina,
which in turn affects your physical body.
Right. And by the time, like, I used to drive back home to Columbia, once or twice a month, and I'd come visit you and we'd talk till like 2-3 in the morning, and by the time we were done, I would need like 2 or 3 days to recover, to sleep, and to just like not think about anything remotely big or complex for a little while.
Yeah,
it was rough,
and it is rough. But our point here is just to get people even to try to think about bigger things is just so important in this day and age where there's so much deception, like we were saying earlier, and it's so hard to break out of the pre-programmed notions of what your life should be, of what you're supposed to be thinking about, of what's supposed to entertain you, of what your goals are supposed to be, even what defines success. All those things. I mean, if we're not questioning, if we're not weighing those things against like common sense and reason, and we can talk about the ethos, pathos, logos later, but if we're not weighing those things in our minds, then I and this is my opinion, but I think I'm right. I mean, I wouldn't say it if I didn't think I'm right. If we're not weighing those things, then we're being controlled, dude. It's just that plain and simple.
So you're saying that not questioning the ideas we're handed.
Yeah, I mean, a free thinking mind is first of all, it's rare. Second of all, it should be what every human ultimately. Well, I shouldn't say ultimately. It should be what every human does. It should be part of our lives, and that's something we're not taught in school. That's something we're not taught in work. It's just it's like I said, it is like we were saying earlier. It's a journey. But it's a journey that's so important for everybody to take, and I think that journey, for some people at least, is it's down deep inside. Like, there's a desire down deep in there. At a certain point, people are going to get there, and for some people, maybe it doesn't happen until they're on their deathbed, which is a shame. But you know what I'm trying to say? Like, that's super vague.
No, yeah, I completely understand.
A yearning, I guess.
That's exactly the word I was going to use. I came up with the word
myself. It's a yearning for that.
Yeah, we all walk around looking and yearning for something more, and I think that is a big. I think that's a big contributing factor to people coming up with, religious theory or scientific theories that explain what's going on here, why we're here, and what's happening to the world. Like, people are always looking. We're searching.
Yeah, even like my opinions on all that stuff, but let's even like all the science we're told in school. Like, it's there's a reason it's so popular. Like, it satisfies the desire to solve the mystery, or maybe not even to solve the mystery, just to look for the mystery, just to think about the mystery. Like, all that stuff satisfies it, all the galaxies and stars and all that. And it's just this life is just amazing if you really start to think about it.
No, yeah. For whatever reason, we as human beings, like the human condition, seems to dictate that we search for meaning in life. Like, just living life and going through the motions of our day-to-day activities isn't enough. We need a purpose, whether that's learning more in the lab, whether that's what have you, whatever it is. We need a purpose to the way we behave and the things we do. We need something bigger than just, well, I do this on Tuesdays, I do this on Wednesdays, and then I go home and then I die when I'm 102. We need something more than that.
That's pretty good. It's a pretty good age there.
I'm hoping. And so you mentioned something earlier, and I don't want to gloss over that, because it is an important point, and we did like a whole hour and a half on it during our practice runs of this whole ordeal. But the ideas of ethos, pathos, and logos, which are classical forms of argumentation. Ethos being appeal to character, pathos being appeal to emotion, and logos being appeal to logical appeal.
Yeah, let me say one thing there. I think you could take argumentation and also throw in discernment as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But keep going,
So talk a little bit about why those are important and Yeah, talk about a little bit about why those are important.
All right. Well, first of all, I am no philosopher. I have no training in any kind of philosophy, and I have very little knowledge of the ancient Greeks. I just want that to be said. But I am a curious person, and I like to think about this kind of stuff. So, why is it important? Like, how do I say this without being super vague? Like, how do you know something is true or not, I guess?
Yeah.
Is the question you got to ask. Like, do you just take somebody's word for it? Do you just go with the consensus? Like, can the consensus be fooled? So basically,
let me stop you right there. That is one thing that I've heard a ton over the past year or two, is when people are having debates, when people are talking about hot button issues, for whatever reason, people seem to be satisfied with the fact that the consensus decided that one thing was so.
Yeah, how does that make it true?
Right. Like, we could all here agree, like, there are three of us here, me, Murphy, and our invisible producer, Jonathan.
And what about the pup? What about the pup?
And your new baby puppy.
Yes, thank you.
Millie. Yeah, there are so four of us.
Three people.
Right. We could all reach a consensus. We could all decide that, hey, like, grass is purple or the sky is red, but that doesn't make that true. Right?
Yeah, and it's not like, oh, the consensus is wrong every time. I mean, it's not like I'm just being devil's advocate all the time, but people can be fooled. Groupthink is a thing.
I've been fooled a lot.
People can be controlled in mass. If you don't believe that, look out your window, and definitely in March 2020, but that's beside the different episode. Anyway, yeah, I think those are some of the best paths to discernment. And by discernment, I mean, I'm not talking in a spiritual sense, or maybe I am, but we're not talking spiritual right now. It's just like, that's a path to decide whether or not something you're presented with is true. Like, how does it make me feel? Like, does it make me feel a certain way? It's the pathos. Does that mean that it is because I feel this way? Like, because it's my opinion that pathos is the weakest one. Now, there are important parts of pathos for sure. Definitely parts that I struggle with personally. Like part of, in my opinion, the most important part of the pathos discernment and argumentation, and even call it a mode or whatever. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Is empathy.
Empathy is huge. Empathy is a very important.
In my opinion, that's the most important part of pathos, and that's it's all a balancing act too. So if you have too much logos, which logos is logic. And if you go the Christian route, it goes higher than that into order. But we'll just stick with the Greeks. It's logos is logic. So if you have too much of that, you can be unempathetic to other people, even people that are wrong. And you can just not empathize with them. So that's why the balance is important. But that's your pathos. Your ethos is your determination of somebody's character. Like, you may not, there's some smart people out there, man. It's way smarter than us.
Yeah,
and
true.
Who say stuff and you're like, what the heck? That's crazy. But whether or not you decide to adapt that into your life, or if you decide to believe it, or even take parts of it, that depends on what you think of that dude's character.
Right.
You're not going to go out and be like, oh, Hitler said this, so it must be true. There's an ethos judgment there. Since Hitler's bad, you're going to disregard anything Hitler says. That's an ethos kind of.
Yeah, or like, hey, a doctor told me this, so it must be true. Versus, hey,
that's a positive
the
ethos.
Clerk at the store next to my house told me this. Those are different things.
Yeah, so I guess if we're going good and bad, if trying to break down the good and bad like I did with pathos, a good would be loyalty. This is part of ethos. A bad would be appeal to authority, I guess.
Okay, I can get on board with that. Yeah.
And that's kind of the second tier in discernment, argumentation, truth looking, whatever you want to call it. There are many people who are much better spoken than I am, but I hope the concept is, I've tried to get across the concept. Last one, highest one, is logos, also called reason, logic. That's the one where you know for yourself. Logic is almost like, it's almost like the building blocks, like you build logic to get truth. It's like a process. Logic is just, man, how do you even define logic? It's like common sense on steroids. It's like everybody's.
Yeah.
See, if you come up with you're much better spoken.
I mean, it's really difficult to nail down such an ethereal concept when you're dealing with like those three forms of, I think of them as the three forms of argumentation. You're dealing with things that are in essence, very hard to describe, especially when you get to something as big and intense as the idea of trying to describe the idea of logic. Logic would be, at least in my estimation, like the idea of piecing together an argument or piecing together reason one idea at a time, and making sure as you move through that process that each piece, each idea is fundamentally true. Like, I think of the scientific method, not because I love the scientific method, like I'm not, I wouldn't even call myself a scientist at this point, but making sure that, hey, okay, I have this idea, I have this question, I'm going to go see if part A of this question is true, and I'm going to try my best to prove it false. I'm really going to try to prove whatever idea I have is false. And then I'm going to move on to part B.
Oh boy, it's hot in here.
Assumption B. And I'm going to try to prove that false. And then I'm going to move on to part C. And once I make it through every part of that idea, every part of that assumption, and it's all been proven true, like doing my best, I can't prove it false. Then at the end of the day, because A is true, B is true, C is true, this idea must be true.
Yeah. First of all, I'm going to be honest, that was kind of hard to follow. I tried. That was a very conservative approach to the scientific method, which I like, but I think we're getting a little too deep. Ethos, pathos, logos. Logos is the highest one. To go back to what I was saying about the good and the bad.
Yeah.
The good is is reason. Like, that'll stand. That will sniff out a lie like that, especially in today's climate, because there's nothing based on reason anymore. And the bad is the I guess, no empathy, non-empathetic, callous. There we go. The bad is the callousness that can provide. So my point with that is, well, you asked me to describe that. I tried my best. You did a good job describing the scientific method. Is a perfect example of logic. It's a very logical process. It's a shame they don't follow it that much, but that's another episode.
That is another episode.
Anyway, the balance of that is just part of the game. It's part of finding the truth.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. If something, if a new idea finds its way to your doorstep and it passes the pathos test, like, hey, I don't have an adverse emotional reaction to this, like a super adverse, like, a dog didn't cry at me.
Be careful, brother. Your emotions deceive you,
right?
As they say in Star Wars.
And then you can. The person who offered the argument is credible. Then we move on to the most difficult test, which is the test of logos, logic.
And that's the one you have to do yourself.
Right.
Like, you can be... People can tell you about logic all day long. You can take logic classes. But at the end of the day, that one's the one where you got to be making choices, and you got to be the one to think. And that's why it's the most important. Because that is the building block of knowledge, People say that belief is the enemy of knowing. And that's the truth. Like,
I've never heard that before.
Well, it's a thing. It's going around.
I believe you. I live under a rock, so it's okay.
It's tough. It's so tough to get past because pathos and ethos, however viable they may be, and definitely there's good stuff that comes out of that. That's belief. Knowing is reason.
Yeah.
And it's so tough. Like, I'm not trying to judge people. I'm not trying to harp on people, and I'm not trying to puff myself up, but I have gone down the path. And even for me, it's extremely difficult to even arrive at the reasoning state, because there's just so much out there. And it's a discipline. That's really what it is. It's a discipline. And we work on it our entire lives, and that's part of what breeds wisdom, is reason and experience. Reason combined with experience. And not that I'm wise, because I'm only 26 years old, but I have had some experience, and I'm trying to get better at reason. So that's my take on that. What that has to do with our podcast is we will hope everybody goes through those exercises, extremely vague as that may be.
Yeah, the goal here is to just offer people, whoever's listening, offer you ideas, and hope that you, as the listener, as the person who's receiving these ideas, put them to the test.
Yeah, break it into three things.
What?
Break it into the three things. So the stuff we're going to say, it might make you feel bad initially, That's the pathos. Or it might make you feel good, depending on your worldview, depending on your life experience. But you got to get past that. What you think of us, you can...
Yeah, you might hate us, you might love us.
Delve into our lives. You can say, oh, well, Robert, you can barely speak. And it's like, well, you'd be right. Or Carson...
You've been in school for 8 years.
Yeah.
You must be an idiot.
You never use people's names. It's kind of weird. But
yeah.
So that's the ethos. You got to get past that.
Yeah.
What we're saying, you have to think for yourself, regardless of the presenter, regardless if you think that's an insane idea or it makes me feel like, how dare you say that or whatever. You've got to get to the idea, and you've got to think about the idea yourself. And that, let me tell you, folks, that is very hard.
It's super hard. I mean, it happens to me on the daily. Like, somebody I don't like will tell me something, and I'll have either an emotional or a character reaction to it. Like, either something they said has upset me, and I don't want to listen to it.
That guy's a douchebag.
Or, I think he's an idiot, and I don't want to listen to it. And then I'll react, whether it's, outwardly, and I'll say something, or in my head, and I'll think, oh, he's an idiot, but I'm going to move on because I don't want conflict here at work or here at school. And then I'll go home, and 20 minutes into trying to get some sleep, I'll be thinking, and I'm like, oh, well, he was right, and I'm an idiot. And that's the process, and it's hard, and sometimes it's not all that pleasant.
Yeah, and that's part of being open-minded. Like, everybody's saying they're so open-minded these days, but as our dear preacher said at church one time, I love this. He probably didn't come up with this quote, but he said, you're so open-minded that your brains fall out. Like,
I'm pretty sure that's an old Southern saying.
Well, Randy said it, and I thought, Randy, great quote. Anyway, but yeah, that's part of being open-minded and being able to change your mind. And I'm the world's worst about it. Like, I'm really, 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 really stubborn, and I know what I believe, and I've really reasoned through the stuff I believe. But I know I am wrong about stuff. Like, that's another thing. Is everybody? Here's another truth for you. Maybe you agree with this or not. And this is kind of off topic, kind of not. But, we got to go for like an hour, right?
That's like a requirement, I think.
Yeah, anyway, so there's something that every person believes right now, and belief is not knowing. But there's something in everybody's life and everybody's worldview that they believe right now that is wrong when you compare it to objective truth. Would you agree with that statement?
I would 100% agree with that.
Now, trying to sniff that out is, again, part of the journey, and it's part of maturity, in my opinion, is to be willing to admit that. And which is extremely tough for me.
No, it's hard, and one of the things I think about is, I heard a story a long time ago. It's like one of those old anecdotes of a guy giving the commencement speech at the graduating class at like Harvard Med School or something, and he tells the graduating class of medical students, "I've got good news and bad news for you. The good news is 50% of what we've taught you in the last 4 years of medical school is 100% wrong. The bad news is we don't know which half." And I don't even think that's the hardest teaching. Dude, like, the fact that half of what you know is probably 100% completely wrong. I think the hardest thing is having the humility to be able to admit that. I know it's the hardest thing for me, is having the humility to be able to admit to yourself, hey, this idea that I was handed when I was 3 years old, when I was 8 years old, last year, this idea could be wrong, and I need to be able to take whatever Joe Sixpack, who I may not have a ton of respect for, sitting me across the table. I need to be able to take whatever he is saying and be able to hold that up against what I believe and compare the two fairly in an equal light. I need to be able to do that, and that for me still is the hardest thing.
Yeah, that's tough for everybody. It's just getting to that point where you could even do that, because most people just respond with anger. But that's beside the point. We need to get back. Let's kind of wrap it up. How does this relate to our podcast? Like, because our podcast is an ultimate attempt to get people to go down this journey, and for us to go down the journey ourselves.
Right. And so our plan is to just start moving through ideas and topics one by one, week by week,
episode by episode. Break down either events or topics or controversial things sometimes. Sometimes it won't be controversial. Hopefully not boring things. I'm bad about rambling sometimes, but we'll try to stay on point, stay in research, present ideas to y'all, and have you think about them. I personally am real big into like science for one, and specifically science, cosmology, and spiritual things, and then economic stuff. And I know you're real big into health.
That's home, yeah.
And exercise, which is part of health. But we each come at it from our own perspective. We'll be throwing things out at you. Like next episode. It's the next one.
I think the next episode we're going to do is going to be on
vaccination and immunization. Yeah. So it's going to be stuff to listen about, stuff to ponder, stuff you might even learn. We could be wrong, we could be not wrong. It's just it cannot say this enough. It's just the time to think, boys, because nobody thinks, and we want people to think. And when you think, you go down that road right there.
Right. The Veritas Road. We have our cool logo behind us.
Yeah, am I in the way?
We might be.
Dude, made that with freaking PowerPoint on Apple, me and Chuck.
That's not bad. So yeah, the goal is to just present people with ideas and don't take us at face value. Check us out.
Well, I mean, do take us at face value, but don't let that be the only thing you do.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we've beaten that dead horse to death.
I don't think you can beat that one enough sometimes.
Well,
I still have problems with that.
You're probably not wrong.
And this is something I've been focused on for the past 2 years. But no, you're probably you're right.
I don't know. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
We need to go with where can you find this lovely podcast?
So
start stopping
for you folks. We're going to be on Apple Podcasts. We're going to be on Spotify. We're going to be on the Google Play Store. We're on YouTube. Literally everywhere podcasts are sold. We're there. We're there. You can find us. We're going to be there. And if you're frustrated by our lack of high quality production value, which is still a problem, I'm sorry. We're working on fixing it. You can visit us at Patreon and Subscribestar. We do take personal checks. I promise you that.
Yeah, I used to work at a bank. I understand how the float system works. I can tell whether your check's bad or not. So, yeah, we'll take checks.
Yeah, we've got a banker on staff right here.
Former banker. Do not put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
We've got a former banker on staff. Forgive me.
We're also going to be on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook.
All the social media.
You know, I would like to get to the point where I see interesting stuff and then just like retweet that, whatever that means.
I'm still not sure what that means.
I'm not one of the kids, fellas, so I don't know all the lingo.
You could not have picked two people worse with social media.
Anyway,
that's true.
If you want to reach us, if you want to talk to us about stuff or have stuff we should talk about, or even want to, come over to the great state of Tennessee and talk with us. We have an email. What's the email, Carson?
Email is theveritasroad@gmail.com. All one word, all lowercase. Literally anything you want to say, you can reach us there. You can reach us on Instagram. You can reach us on Facebook. However you want to get in touch with us, we'll be there.
I read all that stuff. Carson will eventually read it. He's not as good about reading as I am.
That's true.
Just saying. But we'll see. We'll read everything.
Yeah. All right, guys. So thanks for listening. We are so excited to be talking to you guys more.
Yeah, I'm really pumped. We got vaccines coming up.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about
topic. Edward Jenner's extremely interesting dude, but we'll save that for next time.
Yeah. Tune in. We're going to be talking about vaccines. We're going to be talking about world religions at some point, right?
That's going up. Yep.
So tune in. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming your way. Anything else before we land this plane?
I don't know. We're approaching the runway, slowing down pretty good. Got to get the wheels up. How long can I keep this metaphor going? Are we touching down now? Slamming on the brakes. Flaps are back. Everybody's buckled.
All right, guys. I'm going to cut this off because I'm getting tired of hearing it. I'm sure you are too. Thank you for listening. We look forward to hearing from you guys. This is The Veritas Road, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yep.